you get silver outperforming or having a greater drawdown in a percentage basis than you do gold. Now, we're still seeing that, but
Yeah,
they have really uncoupled in
that's
terms
right.
of what we've seen recently, in which silver has just taken off and I believe is playing catch up to gold's move to the all-time record high. And that occurred quite some time ago because that occurred during the last couple of weeks of October. And silver was relatively flat at that point in terms of gains.
When gold establishes sufficient momentum that gold producers' margins increase, the market falls through to the gold stocks. It isn't until the generalist investor begins to come into the precious metals space, after the gold narrative has attracted the generalist money, that silver moves. But when that crossover occurs, in my experience, silver begins to substantially outpace gold, which we've seen this year. I mean, we've had some very, very, very nice moves in the last quarter of this year in the silver price, which would suggest that the crossover is occurring.
Gary Wagner discusses the recent performance of silver and gold, highlighting the tendency of both metals to move in tandem, with silver typically outperforming gold during price rallies and underperforming during downturns. However, recent trends show silver significantly outpacing gold as it catches up to gold's earlier all-time highs. Despite reaching new record highs, Wagner notes the difficulty in predicting silver's future due to its uncharted territory above $60 per ounce. He remains optimistic about silver's continued upward potential, possibly reaching $68 by year-end, while gold could attempt to reclaim its October record highs. Both metals are expected to remain strong, driven by sustained investor interest and high trading volume, with a strong likelihood of continued price strength into the new year. Before we go to the interview, please like the video and subscribe to the Bullion Vibes for more informative content.
What I can say is that we have typically seen both of them move in tandem. However, on moves up, silver tends in terms of percentage gains to outperform gold. Reciprocally, when they're in a corrective period, when they're moving to lower prices, the opposite is true. You get silver outperforming or having a greater drawdown in a percentage basis than you do gold. Now, we're still seeing that, but
Yeah,
they have really uncoupled in terms
that's right.
of what we've seen recently, in which silver has just taken off and I believe is playing catch up to gold's move to the all-time record high. And that occurred quite some time ago because that occurred during the last couple of weeks of October. And silver was relatively flat at that point in terms of gains. And then silver took off with a mind of its own, let's say. It definitely is outperforming gold in terms of percentage gains. And now that it is at a new all-time record high, it becomes more difficult to peg where silver could go. We're making assumptions as to where it might go by the end of the year, where it might go next year. But these are assumptions because as a market technician, we have no data at how silver performed above $60. Simply put, it's never been here before. And so because of that, it makes it much more difficult to really predict where it would go. Although I do believe it's possible that we will see silver continue to move up. We could see it move really as high as 68. That's a tremendous push, but I believe that is within the possibility of probabilities by the end of the year. Gold is just trying to play catch up to the former all-time record high because it is below that now. And I believe that both gold can try to recapture the all-time record high. And I believe that silver, as hot as it's running, doesn't appear to show any signs of letting up. We could see higher prices as we go into the end of the year. There's still time left. We've got 20 days left in this year. So a lot could happen. And I believe that the precious metals as a complex will remain strong. They will not give up much of what they have captured. And I would not be surprised to see silver close out the year at an all-time record high above current pricing, and gold to recapture the all-time record high that it hit on the third week of October. And no one knows what we'll see even over the next couple of weeks, let alone first quarter of next year.
Yeah.
But I can say that I think that because silver has moved up so aggressively and has gone to an all-time record high, we will continue to see it move higher until it doesn't. And the first indication of that might come by the end of the year. But at the same time, I expect the precious metals to remain strong, to remain above certain target levels. I think that there is more room on the upside in silver. I think that gold could attempt to recapture the record highs of October, but that's still to be seen. But I believe that those are very much possibilities. Because we are seeing such a interest in that asset class, and the volume has been strong. It has returned in gold. It has increased in silver. And for that reason, I think that we, as you put it, we could see it sell off, and that is a possibility. But I also believe that there's a very strong possibility that it will remain at or higher at these current levels throughout the year.
Rick Rule explains that silver has recently outpaced gold as generalist investors enter the precious metals market. He notes that when gold stocks perform well, silver tends to follow. But once this crossover happens, silver's price often accelerates faster. Rule highlights an imbalance in the silver futures market, where contracts frequently trade at volumes much higher than the available supply. While there's no physical silver shortage in the US or Canada, he warns that disruptions in the futures market, driven by arbitrage and supply shifts, could create risks. Now, let's back to the next interview.
When gold establishes sufficient momentum that gold producers' margins increase, the market falls through to the gold stocks. It isn't until the generalist investor begins to come into the precious metals space, after the gold narrative has attracted the generalist money, that silver moves. But when that crossover occurs, in my experience, silver begins to substantially outpace gold, which we've seen this year. I mean, we've had some very, very, very nice moves in the last quarter of this year in the silver price, which would suggest that the crossover is occurring, that the generalist investor is coming into the precious metal space. And for whatever reason, perhaps the lower unit price of silver, perhaps merely its reputation for volatility, silver is beginning to handily outpace gold. I would be remiss, too. I haven't been one of these silver conspiratorialists. I haven't been one who believed, for 40 years, the price of silver was falling all by itself. It didn't need a bunch of help. But let's leave that aside. There is an imbalance in the silver market. It is not uncommon in the futures market for futures contracts to exchange every day that are 200 times the amount of silver available for good delivery. Almost always, these contracts are rolled over. They almost always cash settle. What happened very recently is because of the arbitrage between North American pricing and London pricing, people began to hold those contracts for delivery. There was a 4% overnight arbitrage, sending the stuff to London. And that has caused the futures markets in the United States in particular to begin to malfunction. I don't mean physical malfunction, that so-called power outage they had. But I think there's really starting to be some creaks in a market that on occasion, frequently, trades on a daily basis 200 times the silver available for good delivery. Now, I need to say that these reports of silver shortages, I think, are a bit uninformed. In the United States market, and perhaps in Canada too, I don't know, there has been a shortage of retail denominations, retail quantities of silver. But my friends at Sprott report no difficulty buying Sprott for the Sprott Physical Silver Trust. There was a real shortage in London, which probably had to do with a bunch of silver getting shipped from London to the United States in order to beat sanctions. So I don't think that we're having a physical shortage right now. But I think that there is real danger in the futures market.
With silver recently outpacing gold, is this a sign that generalist investors are finally entering the precious metals market? Could silver's impressive gains indicate an imbalance in the futures market, where contracts often exceed the available supply? And with potential disruptions on the horizon, how vulnerable is the silver market to volatility moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments section. And if you found this insight valuable, like the video and subscribe to the Bullion Vibes for more updates. See you in the next video.